Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Plato and Hollywood, a massively nerdy podcast where we ponder the intersections of philosophy and film. We are your hosts, Naomi Nekrasov
and Gwen Bakken.
A little bit about us and why we started this show, just to recap. I am a film student in college right now. I've loved movies and literature for all of my life, and I grew up in a very deep-thinking family. I love thinking about trends in media and the deeper meanings and symbolism in movies, as well as some just fun aesthetic trends in fashion, interior design, photography, and lots more. I'm a writer and a filmmaker, and I also love crafting, costume design, sewing, origami, poetry, dance, sitting outside in my patio in the sun and pretending to be a lizard, and last but not least, I love frogs.
Hello, my name is Gwen Bakken. I am a literature student, and I love classic literature, new books, very rarely, and I love movies and TV shows and breaking down the themes and symbolisms within them. I love breaking down color theory, tropes, cliches, all the things. As hobbies, I dance, I do scrapbooks. I have a bunch of grandma hobbies. Let's just say that. I am your 80-year-old grandmother in a 20-year-old's body.
So me and Gwen have been friends for about 9 years, and we've always shared a lot of the same nerdy passions, and we often find ourselves talking about philosophical and theological implications of the film and literature we consume, as well as comment on the aesthetic choices of the filmmakers. Thusly, we thought it would be a nice idea to share our musings with the world, and this podcast was born. Plato and Hollywood, the intersection of philosophy and film.
Every time we do a podcast, we're going to have distinct sections. So we're going to talk about a topic and then enjoy a special treat or ice cream flavor while giving you all of our movie recommendations for the week. And then we'll discuss a fashion, interior design, or aesthetic trend that we like or dislike. And at the end, we'll review the aforementioned snack or ice cream, and then we will bid you all goodbye.
You didn't say the French word.
I can't speak French. Stop writing French into this script.
No. So without further ado.
Bonjour, I guess.
Bonjour, I guess. Let's jump into our first topic, or our third topic, that is.
Alright guys, we're now moving into the Academy section of the podcast, which is where we basically discuss the burning question or thought that's been on our minds recently. Little disclaimer, Naomi had caffeine today, she had matcha, and now she's bouncing off of the walls, so I'm giving everyone a heads up about that.
I have no caffeine tolerance whatsoever. Well, it's really bad.
There you go, now we know. Our conversation for today in the Academy is allegory in Christian, specifically fantasy. I think we both had on our minds how heavily a Christian worldview and a Christian mindset affects writers who are writing fantasy and kind of the impulse to write an allegory or symbolism that reflects your Christian worldview. So, Naomi, can you describe the premise of what we're going to talk about today?
Sure, yeah. So I think a little bit of what goes into this is when an author is building a fantasy world, there's always like a certain system of magic that they usually make up, but they also are wanting to like teach people about like, you know, the morals that go into the story and like how that interacts with like our real Christian faith. So there's often like some kind of God figure that kind of would represent how we would like relate to God in real life. So that's something I see a lot. Even just the easiest example is like Aslan in Narnia or Iluvatar in the Tolkien books. And so it's kind of interesting to me how, like, it kind of varies in, like, how close they seem to be trying to make the, like, supreme deity, so to speak, in a fantasy book, like, how close they make it to, like, the Christian God.
Like
and I
actual
think,
real life.
Yeah, and I think it sometimes gets a little weird if it's too close to real life.
You're almost committing heresy because you're trying so hard to replicate something while also like make it feel original that it just feels like you're creating an entirely new religion that's so heavily based on something that you already believe that you're just like expanding upon what you would like Christianity to be or what the your ideal version of that religion is.
Yeah, totally. Which I feel like the main place where it gets a little weird that I've read in like some Christian fantasy books recently is like anytime the characters are sort of like praying, I've seen instances where the authors will use the same like spiritual terms as like just a normal like American Christian church would, but
Well,
like it's just not actually about God. It's about this fantastical God. And so for me that becomes a very weird vibe. But then it's like I think they're just trying to avoid it feeling pagan on the other hand.
oh, that's true.
It's
Yeah.
like where do you strike the balance between like, oh, this doesn't feel like a pagan religion, but also you're not trying to like duplicate Christianity in like just a different like a world that has weird trees. You know what I
That
mean?
has weird trees.
Like
Yep. I feel like it's been done really well, specifically in Tolkien and Lewis, which like we use C.S. Lewis as an example of one of the best theologians of the 21st century. And his was like not strictly allegorical, but there was definitely like certain symbols that were meant to relate to certain Christian symbols. And I think we kind of lose track of the fact that he didn't necessarily label his books as allegorical. He actually, Tolkien himself, different author, but Tolkien hated allegory. But yet you've got this one deity and then smaller versions of like a higher power that could be equivalent to angels. So I feel like we kind of cross over allegory and symbolism. You can use Christian symbolism and Christian themes and motifs to kind of impress like where your characters get their worldview from and have it mimic the way that you believe that you should get morality from a higher power. But when you start to try to like recreate experience of being like God in a fictional setting, that's where it starts to get a little weird because none of these were written from the perspective of like a devotee of a certain religion. Like you're devotees of Aslan in Narnia, but you're not, he wasn't describing like how Aslan functioned. He was just describing the characters themselves. He wasn't trying to like explain how God worked. He was trying to explain how Christians worked. Does that make sense? Am I losing my mind?
no, yeah, I feel like it goes over better when you don't like when authors don't try to go into the whole details of like what the exact theology is of like, you know, whatever spiritual things there are in this fantasy world. Is just kind of like it's there and this is how what they believe influences their actions. And I think that's what you should focus on as opposed to like all the details of like where things came from, and then I feel like it just kind of gets a little weird at times at that point.
Yeah, because you're basically creating an exact replica, but with some of your own personal flair.
Yeah, which I think kind of how I started thinking about this was like this one like Christian fantasy book that I was reading, and it was set in like our modern world. Like it talked about like, you know, COVID in 2020 and whatever, and like lots of other like historical events. So it's like clearly set in our world, but it's like God has a different name, and then it's like the characters also do talk about the Bible and like different Bible stories like Exodus and stuff, but then there's also like added things where like they have a different like holy text, and then the like angels and demons are different, and like then certain Christians have like magical powers, and it's just it got a little odd because
a
it
little
just
out of hand.
yeah, because there was just so many things that contradicted, like it was trying to hold both like real life Christianity and also this like made up thing in the same hand, and it was constantly trying to like merge the two. But I think it would have worked better if it had just been like, this is the way it is. We don't really need to like explain every single little thing that happens.
So what I'm hearing you say is like it's almost better to like fully recognize that what you're writing is like symbolism and not try to like reconcile it to like, I want this, but I know I should as a Christian have this instead. If you feel called to write a fantasy with like magic in its world building, or like a separate religion that you're writing characters who are devotees of, you should make it a mirror, not necessarily create something separate and then try to shoehorn your own religion into it. It should be a separate conduit for how you see like, oh, I have this devotion for a specific religion, which for us is Christianity. You should be using your fictional world as a conduit to describe what it feels like to be a Christian. But you shouldn't be like, oh man, I really want witchcraft, but Jesus wouldn't let me. So I think I'm just gonna have to like write something that just like combines the two.
Yes. No, yeah. That's exactly what it is. And I think about like Harry Potter does kind of like, there is so many contradictions in the world building of like, there is magic in this world, but like, since there is magic, it would make absolutely no sense for all the Muggle stuff to just be normal. Like, history was not affected at all by that time has been around for all of time. Like, It just makes no sense whatsoever. But J.K. Rowling just decides not to address that, because then if she tried to fix every little plot hole, it wouldn't be fun anymore. Like,
you'd start to think, why did you even take on this big endeavor of rewriting all of Earth's history?
Yeah. Which, like, alternate history is sometimes interesting to write, but, like...
when that's the goal.
But, like, in a fantasy setting, it's, like, sometimes you just kind of gotta have fun with it. And so I think maybe that's honestly what some recent Christian fiction has had trouble with, is just, like, making it too serious. Of, like, this really has to make sense within the context of, like, faith and, like, explaining all those details.
Like,
yeah.
Tolkien had no shame drawing on, or was it Tolkien or C.S. Lewis? One of the two, like, behemoths of Christian fiction writing, said something along the lines of that, like, Norse mythology is a myth, and, like, Christian history is the true myth. Like, they mirror each other in that, like, the desire to create storylines that are outside of, like, the human perspective is, like, normal. And I think then we as Christians kind of have permission to write myths that reflect the true myth. We shouldn't try to, like, weave something into the true myth. We should make our own, yes, to mirror, but never to, like, add on to. Or try to expand in a way that isn't something that you're, like, studying and, like, actually using as a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
If you look at your story and you say, yes, this reflects my Christian worldview in a way, like, in its content, you don't have to replicate, like, Jesus in there. Because Jesus should be, his character should be reflected in the actual content. And so I feel like Christians get so hung up on everything has to be a word-for-word retelling of the gospel. When we're little Christs, we should be living our lives in a way that reflected the character of Jesus, not necessarily the story of Jesus exactly, because living and telling are two very different things. So sometimes we get so caught up in the duty of we have to tell everyone that we forget that telling sometimes means something different than what we think it does.
Yeah, it kind of very much reminds me of me and Gwen were in this summer camp a couple of years ago, and our, like, group leader, it, like, writes stories, and books and stuff. And something she said was, like, when she started out writing, just kind of didn't want it to be, like, Christian per se, just because so much like Christian content is just has been a little cheesy and a little cringe at times. But it was like, as she was like trying to just be like, oh, this isn't like, it's clean, but it's not like, you know, cheesy Christian stuff. But she ended up, I forget what the exact words were, but it was something like, she realized that she couldn't write anything that doesn't have God in it. Mm-hmm. And not necessarily because there needs to be a direct allegory all the time, but just because of who we are as Christians who are creative, that like our faith is going to show up in anything that we create and write, no matter what it is.
Yeah. I like the way that this kind of wrapped up. It's the content of your heart as an author, not necessarily the content of your book. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that about sums it up.
Let's go.
Alrighty, well, that is all for the Academy section. It is time for the Inside Scoop.
On to the Inside Scoop now, where Naomi and I are going to be testing various different treats and sweets that we can find, I don't know, in the area at the grocery store. Today we have mochi. We got
mochi, which is a Japanese dessert, I believe. It is like a gelatinous bean based like paste on the outside, and then
it's rice dough.
Wait.
It's a rice dough.
Doesn't it sometimes have beans in it?
I don't think this one does. This particular one that we're eating at the moment does not. Okay. We've got a mango one and a strawberry one.
Yeah. But at any rate, it has the rice stuff and then ice cream on the inside. Which I don't think I've had the mango before. So, we're testing it out.
Let's go.
How do we rate them for flavor?
For flavor? Strawberry one, easily my favorite. I love it so much. The rice dough, I feel like, is very chewy. I only enjoy it when it's super cold. You can't really have it any other way. Mm-hmm. But it's got like kind of a flour powder on the outside. It's got this chewy kind of like ball of dough, and on the inside is ice cream. And the strawberry, it's my favorite of all time. I love it so much.
I'd say on a scale of 1 to 10. Yeah, the strawberry is just immaculate. I would maybe give these like an 8 or so, just because they're from Kroger and they're not authentic. And weirdly enough, my favorite flavor of mochi is actually like the bean one.
Girl, what?
Which is super funky, but that's like the most authentic version, I think. And for some reason I like it better.
You know what, that's so fair. Naomi is knocking off points for being from Kroger. It's crazy.
Well, yeah, because my family used to get the, like, real ones from Japan, like, from this Japanese grocery store in Nashville, and they were absolutely amazing.
I'm giving it a 7 out of 10, because you cannot really enjoy it once it starts to melt.
Yeah, that's my bad.
Because then it gets really, like, kind of sticky and kind of melty. But, thankfully, mine have not melted yet, so we're good.
Amazing.
It's still a 10 out of 10 for the next, like, minute and a half, and then the points will start to go down gradually.
That's so true. How do we rate the mochis for aesthetics?
Oh, gorgeous. Beautiful dessert.
Mm-hmm. I agree. 10 out of 10. They're all like pastel.
The pastel colors. I'm living my pink Barbie dream, y'all. Mm-hmm. It's great. I got a pink Stanley Cup and pink mochi and a pink phone. Literally, could not be more of a Swiftie in this moment. Aesthetically, at least.
That's very true. Unfortunately.
What?
Anyways, moving on to the recommendations and unrecommendations section, aka must see or else.
Must see or else.
Welcome back, guys, to the must see or else portion. My movie recommendation for this week is...
I hate you.
the B movie.
No!
Because, see, what happened is that Gwen unrecommended the B movie last time so vehemently that I was like, I feel like I have to watch this to see what all the hype is about. And there's both positive and negative hype. So anyways, I watched the B movie this week.
I can't believe you've done this.
I'm sorry. I betrayed you. That's my bad. My raw and honest thoughts about the B movie is that I really wanted to hate it and for it to be the worst cartoon I've ever seen, but it really wasn't. First of all, because Jerry Seinfeld was the voice of the main character, and that's just golden. And then also it just had some good jokes. The world building was crazy. The plot line was kind of felt like a Wes Anderson movie to some extent. Just as far as it just kind of not having a plot line. And yeah, and I've just seen a lot worse and more cringe cartoons lately, like Trolls and Despicable Me 4, and just
Despicable
things.
Me 4 is crazy.
And like Boss Baby 2, like, come on, horrible writing, horrible everything, not entertaining at all. But, you know, at least the B movie was slightly entertaining, so...
The unfortunate thing is that, like, I'm aware that the writing is good, and the world building goes hard, and the jokes are actually funny. It just makes me deeply uncomfortable every time I watch it, because there's, like, romantic tension in between an insect and, like, a human woman. So, I just can't. I can't. Why would you do this?
It is terrible. It's awful, and it should not have been made, but it was, and that's hilarious. Well, so anyways, yeah, on to Gwen's unrecommendation of the week.
Okay, so my unrecommendation of the week is this movie. It's a romance drama. It on IMDb, it is labeled as feel-good romance, drama, and romance. It is called Me Before You, starring Emilia Clarke and Sam Claflin, and it is horrible. It's like marketed as this cute little like beat the odds romance with like this like lead girl who dresses like cute and spunky, like millennial, like quirky girl, and then this guy, the like lead love interest, who is like paralyzed from the neck down, and she's like hired to be his personal caretaker. And they're setting you up for like she's gonna give him a will to like live, and she's gonna help him recover and like find his spark and like joy again. And okay, spoilers, cover your ears if you don't want spoilers for this movie. He commits like euthanasia at the end because he's just like, yeah, you're not worth it, life isn't worth it, hate this, and then checks out. And it's supposed to be like, oh, cute, heartwarming, bittersweet, like they weren't meant for each other, but like the dude that like actively chose to kill himself even though she begged him not to. And I am so over the idea that this is like, quote unquote, a feel-good romance. It is not. It is just heartbreaking, and like I don't really jive with the energy that like killing yourself brings to the end of rom-coms. So that is that. Me Before You. It is 2016, PG-13. Runtime is an hour and 50 minutes, but that doesn't matter because you're not going to watch it. Okay, guys, it is time for cool stuff. This is where we talk about like our aesthetic trends of the week, what we've been thinking about, pondering on, and buying thrifted clothes for.
Oh yeah. So today's aesthetic for the week is something that I kind of made up myself, but also discovered was a real thing after I made it up. Anyways, we're calling it Fisherman Core. And this is basically what I think the, like, fall vibes of 2024 are going to be, like, fall/winter.
This is a prediction. Write this down,
This
y'all.
is a prediction. We'll see if I'm right or not. Fisherman Core, or it could be also called Lighthouse Core, is basically, like, kind of rustic, like, coastal New England type of vibes. So, a lot of, like, blue and white and gray, and a lot of neutrals. Mm-hmm. plus blue, I'd say. But there's definitely some, like, I would say, like, Scandinavian influences in this type of fashion. So kind of like embroidered things.
Lots of, like, utility, lots of useful. So you've got, like, your cable knit sweaters, but you've also got, like, heavy work boots and, like, Carhartt jackets. It doesn't really evoke your classic, like, fall wardrobe, which is sort of warm, cozy, warm colors you're kind of hanging on to the last bit of summer. It's more, like, harsh. They're kind of, like, gloomy weather, like, salt water, like, rocky shores. Very, almost sharp.
Which, yeah, I think in the, like, lighthouse core, it does veer sometimes into more, like, cottage core, where it's, like, more like the fisherman's wife vibe, or, like, you know, maybe that would be a little bit more, like, comfy.
Naomi's
like,
talking about living in a lighthouse.
Dresses. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, yeah, so the reason for this prediction is that, as you all know, this summer has been cowgirl summer, which has also been a very kind of rugged type of style, I would say. And so
especially
I think,
Gothic Western, which is what we've been doing. And Lighthouse Core kind of has some Gothic influences, I think, with kind of like New England cryptids and stuff like that.
Oh yes, absolutely. That's very much there. So yeah, my argument is that, like, in the first half of the year, that, like, the west of America has kind of had its, like, time in the spotlight as far as, like, style. So I think it would make sense for, like, the last half of the year to kind of put the east half of America in the spotlight. So, I don't know. We'll see.
We're seeing two widely different, like, culture of, like, the United States represented in the span of 1 year, and I think that's kind of cool.
I think it is pretty cool. So, yeah, go out and buy your cable knit sweaters, guys, before fall rolls around.
And the rain boots. It's time for NoahCon fall, I guess.
It is NoahCon fall, guys.
Let's go.
Get ready.
Okay, nerds, that is all we have for you today.
Thank you so much for listening. If you're interested to listening more content like this, let us know, and be sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel and Instagram at Plato and Hollywood. And be sure to be on the lookout for this episode on other streaming platforms in the future. Until next time.
Do swania, tovarish?
That was pretty good.
Okay, I'm getting better, y'all.